What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I want to take a look at a fight that took place November 30th, 1979 in Las Vegas, Nevada. And it turned out to be a 15-round draw. One of the recipients was Vito antuofermo. He was born February 9th, 1953 in Bali, Italy. He fought out of Brooklyn, New York. He stood 5 foot 8 inches and weighed 154 to 161 pounds. He was managed by Tony Carone. Had a fight record of 50 wins, 7 losses, 2 draws with 21 by the knockout route. Now, the thing with Vito antuofermo, if you saw him in the street, because he was a short 5 foot 8 fighter, he had flat nose, and he had that grimacing look on his face, even when he was happy. And if you owed somebody some money and he was walking down the block, just randomly, you would think he was coming for you. He was that type of a person. But he was a very nice guy. I met him several times. Now, he would win the WBC WBA Middleweight Championship, the EBU Junior Middleweight Championship of Europe. And I know he fought Emil Griffith, Hugo Coro, Denny Moyer, Benny Briscoe, fighters like that. He was an outstanding brawler. He belonged in the 40s and the 50s. He was that type of a fighter. He began his professional debut November 30th, 1971. And he had 12 fights in 1972. He had a fight in 1973, April 13th, against Luis Rivera. Fought him in New York, defeated him in 8 rounds. July 9th, Harold Westman. He had 7 fights in 1974. September 8th, he fought... I think it was the September 8th or September 9th, he fought Denny Moyer. November 22nd, he would face Emil Griffith in New York, and he defeated him in 10 rounds. And it was an outstanding win for him, because Emil Griffith was a 3-time middleweight champion and 2-time welterweight champion. 1975, he would have 7 fights. He would face Raymond Mendez. He would also face Ricky Ortiz that year. 1976, January 16th, he would face Icard Dagi. That would be for the EBU Junior Middleweight Championship strap, and he would win that and become a middleweight champion in Europe. October 1st, he would face Maurice Hope. Fought him in Rome, Italy, and he lost to him in 15 rounds. 1978, he would face Benny Briscoe in New York. He would defeat him in 10 rounds. Benny Briscoe was an outstanding middleweight Philadelphia fighter. 1979, January 30th, he would face Hugo Coro for the WBC WBA Middleweight Champion strap, and he would become the brand new middleweight champion of the world. And in 1979, he would face a fighter by the name of Marvelous MarvinHagler. That would be November 30th, and that would be a 15-round draw. Then on June 28th, he would face Alan Mentor, and he would lose his championship strap to Alan Mentor. Now, the fight with him and MarvinHagler, it was a very, very controversial decision, because it would wind up being a 15-round draw. But MarvinHagler was getting the better of Vito antuofermo plenty of times. That fight did go back and forth. I remember watching that fight. And what was weird about that fight was it was on the same night as Sugar Ray Leonard when he faced Wilfred Benitez. And Hagler always thought that that card was set up to distract his victory had he won. And it was just an unfortunate circumstance for Marvelous MarvinHagler. Now, Vito antuofermo was a very hard puncher. He was a brawler. He would get in your face and he would never move. And that was the thing with MarvinHagler. Hagler had to box that fight. And if you look years later, he would have the same type of opponent when he would face John the Beast Mugabe. But at that time of his career, he had to slug with Mugabe because he couldn't move the way he could move when he was younger. Vito antuofermo, as you can see here, began his career in 1971. And he would have multiple victories, multiple KOs. 1972, he would have several fights. 1973, he would lose his first fight by knockout to a fighter by the name of Harold Weston. He was a good fighter, good New York fighter. Remember him very well. July 9th. 1974, he would have all victories. including a victory over Melvin Dennis, another good fighter. He would defeat Emil Griffith in 10 rounds, November 22nd, and that was in New York. 1975, he would have several fights, all victories. He would face Ricky Ortiz, very good fighter was Ricky Ortiz. Raymond Mendez, another good fighter. 1976, he would win the EBU, Junior Middleweight Championship strap, over Eckhard Dagi. Defeat him in Berlin in 15 rounds. He would have a couple of title defenses in that EBU division. 1977, that would be the year that Sugar Ray Leonard would turn professional. He would face Cyclone Hart, very good fighter, knock him out in 5 rounds. That was another MarvinHagler opponent. 1978, another MarvinHagler opponent. February 4th, he would face Benny Briscoe out of Philadelphia. Fought him in New York, defeated him in 10 rounds. Now, Vito Antuofermo fought out of Brooklyn, New York. So a lot of his fights were either in New York or Las Vegas, according to, where the money was. But on 1979, June 30th, he would face Hugo Coro, who was a middleweight champion at that time. Fought him in Monte Carlo, that's upstate New York. And he would win the middleweight championship strap, 15-round decision. And he would become the new middleweight champion of the world. November 30th, he would face Marvelous MarvinHagler in Las Vegas, Nevada. And as I said, that was the same exact night that Ray Leonard would face Wilfred Benitez for the welterweight championship strap, WBC version. And he would wind up getting a 15-round draw. And Vito Antuofermo would retain his world middleweight championship strap. And we look at MarvinHagler. MarvinHagler, 5'9.5" weighed 160 pounds. He was born on May 23rd, 1952 in Newark, New Jersey. He was originally from Newark, New Jersey. Then he would move over to Brockton, Massachusetts, where he would meet the Petronelli brothers. And 1973 is when he began his pro debut. He would fight fighters, as you can see here, Muhammad Smith, Sonny Williams. And he would do very well for himself. 74, all victories. He would have 1 draw against Sugar Ray Seals. Now, I did a profile on Sugar Ray Seals. Sugar Ray Seals would wind up losing his NABF middleweight championship strap to James Black and Gold Schuler. 1975, he would have several fights. He would win by disqualification from Jimmy Owens, who he just fought about a month prior. 1976 would be the year that Sugar Ray Leonard would win the gold medal in Montreal. And he would face Willie the Worm Monroe, and he would lose to him in 10 rounds. And that would be one of Hagler's losses. He would also lose to Bobby Boogaloo Watts, January 13th in Philadelphia. He would lose to him in 10 rounds. Now, both his losses was in Philadelphia, so he had it out for the Philadelphia fighters. He would face Eugene Hart. That was a Vito Antuofermo opponent. He fought him September 14th, 1976, and he would knock him out in 8 rounds. And that was a very good victory for MarvinHagler at that time. 1977, the year Sugar Ray Leonard would turn professional, he would face or have a rematch with Willie the Worm Monroe, August 23rd, Philadelphia, and he would knock him out in 2 rounds. And that would be redemption. He would fight Monroe again, knock him out in 12 rounds in Boston, February 15th, earlier that year. Now, I was at this fight, 1978. He would face Benny Briscoe, August 24th, Philadelphia, and he would defeat him in 10 rounds. And he grabbed the microphone and called out a fighter by the name of Ronnie Harris. And Ronnie Harris was making a lot of noise at that time. He would face Sugar Ray Seals February 3rd, 1979. Knock him out in 1 round. I was at that fight. That was in Boston. He defeated him. November 30th, Vito Antuofermo. He would get that 15-round draw. That was for the middleweight championship strap. He would eventually defeat Alan Minter, September 27th, 1980, in London. He would knock him out in 3 rounds. He would win the middleweight championship strap. He would fight Boogaloo Watts that same year, and he would knock him out in the 2nd round. So he regained his losses, definitely. But in that Mentor fight, they threw everything but the kitchen sink at him. Unbelievable. An outstanding moment in boxing was when Hagler defeated Alan Mentor. But he wanted to get redemption, as Joe Louis did with Max Schmeling after he was champion. He suffered his loss, or actually it was a draw, but he considered it a loss. And he said, I would never allow the judges to decide my victories. These two fists would. And he never wanted to fight in Las Vegas after that. But that's where the money was. And that's where he fought Sugar Ray Leonard in 1987. And he got that loss, third loss of his career, and he would retire. Now, as you can see here, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, beautiful right jab to Vito Antuofermo. Always with the right jab, popping Vito Antuofermo's head back. And as you can see here, he would switch from southpaw to righty. And he would hit Vito Antuofermo this time with a left jab. Marvin Hagler had multiple tools in his toolbox, and he always used them. He never wanted to prove a point other than a Leonard fight. But he was a phenomenal fighter, was Marvelous Marvin Hagler. This was a great fight. It was a good fight for him. Now, as I said, I have met Vito Antuofermo several times, probably 20 times. Always gracious guy. And he told me a lot of stories about boxing and about his life. And I learned a lot from Vito Antuofermo. I met Hagler. He never went into his career when we had conversations. He just talked a few, about some of the old-time fighters, some of the guys that are around at his time, but he never really wanted to get into his actual career. It's just the way Marvin Hagler was, at least with me. As you can see here, both of these fighters about to collide heads. They fought in close quarters. Vito Antuofermo never backed down, neither did Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Marvin Hagler took the boxing approach, but he would get inside and use two hands when needed. Here you have Freddie Brown. Freddie Brown was the trainer for Vito Antuofermo. He was in the New York gyms. I met him several times. Freddie Brown was also part of Marciano and Rocky Graziano. A lot of the Italian fighters was Freddie Brown. Here you have Marvelous Marvin Hagler with a beautiful body shot to Vito Antuofermo. He tries to overshoot that body shot with a left hand. And like I said, that was a very, very good fight between these two men. And Hagler really had a personal vendetta over Vito Antuofermo. As you can see here, another headbutt. But Vito Antuofermo is kind of he's an underrated middleweight. I mean, he didn't have the style, he didn't have the finesse, but he had the heart. And he just came around at a time where I think he would have done a lot better if he was in the 50s and the 60s, perhaps the 40s, because that was more of his style. That was more of the type of men he would have faced. And it would have put him in line with some of those great fighters at that time. But he did very well for himself at that particular era. Marvin Hagler came over and had to change things because Marvin Hagler was just that kind of a fighter. He was a great fighter. And hopefully his career is not overlooked. And I'm trying to keep his career historically alive as well in these series that I do. Here you have Marvin Hagler and a guy by the name of Tony Simpson. Another good fighter. Beautiful right jab. Actually breaks his nose, as you can see here. Shoves it to the side. Beautiful snapping right jab. Marvelous Marvin Hagler over Tony Simpson. Beautiful right uppercut. Actually a left uppercut, of Marvin Hagler to Vito Antuofermo. And Antuofermo had told me several times that Marvin Hagler had a very, very hard punch with either hand. He said he could fight. It was one of the best fights he has ever been in, was with Marvin Hagler. And when I saw Hagler that, I told him that, but Hagler just didn't really like talking about his career. He did have positive things to say about Vito Antuofermo, but he just didn't. Hagler was the type of guy, once he had a vendetta over you, he always had it. And as much respect he had for Thomas Hearns after their fight, but he still felt that he was a better fighter than Thomas Hearns and, so on and so forth. Here you have Vito Antuofermo, left jab, keeps Hagler at bay. But these two men, I'll tell you, outstanding fight between Vito Antuofermo and Marvelous Marvin Hagler. So thank you for hanging in there with me. Salute to both fighters. This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series, stating all great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. I will always support these fighters who's given us thrills, put their lives on the line, and fought for the true reason of fighting. They were prize fighters. Salute to these great fighters, Vito Antuofermo and Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Salute.